it was supposed to be a kind of a quiet day. We were kind of in the process of having the Taliban come into our village, and we were going to negotiate the peace with Kandahar with them. Of course, Karzai was with us, and then this happened. So it was really a setback. Karzai was lightly wounded. It's superficial, but of course, he could have been killed, and that would have really turned things in a different direction. It was just a really bad day, and because we it's obviously friendly fire. I don't really like the term too much, friendly fire. It's anything but. It hurts just as much. But I had never been at ground zero of a 2,000-pound JDAM. I hope I never am again. It was a day that changed the rest of my life.
About how far away from the impact do you think you were?
I was in the little building, but there was a big plexiglass window in front of me. I was actually sitting on a footlocker, starting to work on my laptop and type some things out. So all the frag came in that window, and it's a pretty good sized window. It was probably about 10 or 12 feet wide. And so that didn't help. And that was it was 50 meters, 40 yards right outside my window.
Wow.
So it was very close. I just throw a baseball up there.
Yo, what's up, guys? Today's episode is sponsored by Lucy Nicotine. It's 100% pure nicotine, always tobacco-free. Lucy Breakers are nicotine pouches with an extra little surprise. Each pouch holds a capsule that can't be broken and open to release extra flavor and hydration. Set yourself up with a subscription and have Lucy delivered straight to your door. I've been rocking these for the last couple of weeks. They sent us a bunch, and it's pretty dope. I was screwing around with the mango, but now I've gone to the espresso. So I've been dabbling in a bunch of different flavors. So right now I'm super hot on the espresso one. It's really tasty and delicious. I'm a lightweight. I use 2%. You can get hardcore. They have a ton of different levels of nicotine. If you're a more hardcore person, you can go for the higher ones. I have a sensitive system. My mom always used to tell me that. So I go 2%. And I rock it, whenever I'm feeling a little stressed out or whatever, after a meal or something like that, I'll throw in a little pouch, and it's freaking awesome. I love Lucy. You would love Lucy too. Do us a favor. Go to lucy.co/house and use the promo code HOUSE to get 20% off your first order. Lucy has a 30-day refund policy. If you change your mind, so you can send it back, no sweat. Again, that's lucy.co. Use the code HOUSE to get 20% off. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Thanks, guys.
Special operations. Covert ops. Espionage. The Team House. With your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 335 of the Team House. I'm Jack Murphy with our guest today, Donald Parnell. Don served for 24 years in the CIA and as I recall, 11 years before that with the Marine Corps. He served all over the world, mainly in war zones, went all the way up to become the chief of ground branch, bouncing around between being an operations officer and a paramilitary officer. He has also been awarded the Intelligence Cross, and we're very excited to have you on the show today, Don. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely thrilled I'm being here, Jack. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, Don, let's jump into it, man, a little bit with your origin story. Tell us a little bit about, how you grew up and how that took you towards, I think initially it was the police department.
Yeah, no, actually, initially I went to the Marine Corps, then I went to the police department.
Okay.
But I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm a multi-ethnic guy. My mother's Korean. My parents were younger when they had me. They're only 21 years old, so we've always been close in age. My mom had come to the United States in the late 50s and met my father in Oklahoma when she was in school. Then they had me. And so then 7 years later, they had my sisters, who happened to be twins. But pretty much great parents, great upbringing. My mom's still alive. My dad just passed last year. but fantastic parents, just had a great family life growing up. I was in Tulsa up until about the third grade. And then my dad worked for the oil companies. He was actually a landman, which has been made famous now with the Billy Bob Thornton movie and stuff like that. But he did that stuff back in the old days. And we moved to New York, White Plains. We lived in White Plains for 5 years.
I know where that is.
Yeah, sure you do. That was the late 60s and the early 70s. And then by 1974, we moved to Fort Worth, Texas. He still worked he was with Texaco and he moved on to another company. And so I went to basically 8th grade, high school, and college in Texas. So Texas has always kind of been my home, per se, Fort Worth, Texas in particular. I still have some family in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and stuff like that. My sister still lives there. That's where my dad lived up into his death. I mean, so it's Fort Worth, especially the west side of Fort Worth. It's always been considered my old home and stuff like that. Still have a number of friends back in the area. Went to school, went straight to college. My parents or my father was one of those guys that you will go to college, you will go to school, you were not going to do anything else. So I was a big football player and I was a big athlete in high school and growing up. And I wanted to play football in those days in the defunct Southwest Conference, Texas and all the Texas schools and stuff like that. I was about a step too slow and maybe an inch too short. So unless I want to be a tackling dumb. So I ended up going to at the time it was an NAI school. Now it's Division III, a school called Austin College, which is north of Dallas up on the OU border in Sherman, Texas. They had a 4-year college football team, everything. And I played there for 4 years. Fantastic time. It was the best decision I made my entire life up to that point, was decide to go to school at Austin College. My junior year, we won the NAI National Championship in football, had some great success. Amazing coach, just amazing friends, amazing connections that I made while at Austin College. And then, like a lot of us, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. I got out of school. I heard about this program called the Marine PLC program, Platoon Leaders Course, that you can go to Marine OCS between the summers of your years in your summers of your college years. So I went PLC Combined, it was called. It was 10 weeks long back then in the summer of 82. OCS boot camp. It completely crushed me. Somehow I made it through. I lost like 40 pounds. I went from I was in football shape, and I went from like 225 to like $185 in like 10 weeks. But it was fantastic. It was, I got back, came back from my senior in football and senior in college, had a great year, great final year. And then it was like, okay, I graduated from OCS. I can then take my commission as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. So I said, like, hey, this sounds like a great thing to do. I wanted to fly helicopters. I've always been fascinated by helicopters. I still am to this day. But I took the Navy flight physical, and I was determined that I didn't have the eyesight. I had an astigmatism that they couldn't correct. So I still joined the Marine Corps under a ground contract, and I went to the basic school. Every Marine second lieutenant goes to the basic school, whether you're ground or aviation contract. And there I got to become an infantry officer after 6 months at the basic school. Went to the IOC, the infantry officer course. It was a ball buster back then. I think it's a bigger ball buster today. It was fantastic, great. Of course, I'm young, 22 years old. Had a great time. Then I was in Mo 302 now. I pushed out and got orders to Camp Pendleton, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, and went with my first unit out in Pendleton, and I absolutely loved it. That was over 40 years ago, and I still keep in contact with a lot of those guys. We still get together quite often. Just absolutely just loved every minute that I was out there with those guys, and with that unit with 3-1. Did the usual Westpac deployment, things like that, floating around a big gray boat, part of an amphibious task force. It was fantastic. It was the mid 80s. Not a lot was going on then.
Lebanon.
Yeah, Lebanon. That was something. That was the Mao back then. Now they're called Muse, out of the East Coast, and that was about it. I mean, there were a few other things that were happening, and then after my time as a lieutenant, I was coming up on captain, and there was an opportunity for me to go to my B billet. In the Marine Corps, you're going to leave the fleet as an officer, and as a senior first lieutenant or junior captain, you're going to go out and either go to the drill field, go back to Quantico, go recruiting duty. I had an opportunity to go fly back seat in the OV-10 Bronco. They don't fly them anymore. I don't know if people are familiar with it. It's a twin tailboom, a turboprop, light attack aerial reconnaissance vehicle, aircraft, excuse me, that I absolutely loved it. I had 3+ years in it. I just ate it all up. Really great friends. Kind of was able to scratch that aviation itch that I had when I wanted to first join and become a helicopter pilot. Flying in the backseat of the OV-10. They gave us a bit of training. They called us aerial observers. It was a program that goes all the way back to the Vietnam days. I put in a combat arms officer in the backseat of the Bronco.
Yep.
It was right. It did a lot of forward air control, RD air spot, all that good stuff. Aerial reconnaissance, just some helicopter escort, multi-functional aircraft. Marine Corps got rid of it in the mid-90s. It had gone by the wayside. Then I went to school, career level school, fantastic year in the Marine Corps, and I was debating on whether to get out, and then I ended up going out to the fleet as a captain, as company commander. I was in, I always got to get these things. I was in 1-3. I was in 3-1. I was also in 1-3 as a weapons company commander. That was during the Somalia had just happened, taken place. Our unit didn't go to Somalia. The Clinton had come in and his administration had the big drawdown, all the big cuts that were coming. You know, everything that's happening today, people are talking about all these cuts, but we went through all this in the 90s with the Clinton administration. You know, he cut like 377,000 federal jobs, and he cut a bunch of people out of the military back in the 90s. I was offered an incentive to get out at that point in time. It's a different time in the Marine Corps. It's a different time in the world. And I moved back to Texas. And I was applying to all the 3-letter acronyms. We had our first child in Hawaii, and then we had moved back. And meanwhile, I always wanted to be a cop and a fireman. I mean, what kid doesn't want to be a cop and a fireman, right? So my plan was go to the police academy and then become a volunteer firefighter and settle right there on the west side of Fort Worth, where I'm from. So I started out. I did the police academy. Went to Arlington Police Department, right next between Dallas and Fort Worth. It's right where the Texas Stadium is, or the Cowboy Stadium's at now. Loved it. I was only there for a short time. I was out on the streets for a short time. Went through the academy field training out in the streets. I say to this day, even after 40 years of bouncing around doing a variety of things, that was one of the funnest jobs I ever had in my life. Now, this was 30 years ago. Okay. I don't know if I want to be a cop in today's world, but in 95 and 96, I had rookie-itis. It was really one. I was applying to all the 3-letter acronyms. The agency kept calling me back. I just got farther along in the hiring process with them. It literally was the last place in the world that I thought I was ever going to work. I didn't know anybody in the military. I didn't know anybody that ever worked in the intelligence community. I literally mailed a resume and a cover letter to a post office box in Langley, Virginia, and kind of forgot about it. That was back before the internet was really kind of going. So it was something that, and then it happened. And this 18-month, almost 24-month process took place. Meanwhile, I'm out on the streets, just really loving life. And then I got an offer to become a paramilitary officer at CIA. And it wasn't an easy decision. We had a great setup back home in Fort Worth. We had one child at the time. We just had a really good setup, and it was kind of nuts for me to pack the family up and move. But that's what we did. And so I in the summer of 96, I moved the family up to Northern Virginia. And then the next 24 plus years, we were on this crazy ride. that I would have never expected. My wife subsequently started working at the organization about 10 months after I did.
Wow.
It just kind of happened to work that way. She had a background in banking, so she became a finance and budget officer and had her full career. Same time I had mine.
Is that why they offered you paramilitary operations officer, because of your Marine Corps background? They figured that was like a good fit.
Yeah, that was a good fit. Back then, we weren't called that. We were called something else. I think they were called SOPOs back then. I don't even know what that stood for. But the paramilitary operations officer didn't come till a little bit later on, sometime in the 2000s. But back then, it was a very, very small community. There wasn't a lot of us. As you come in as a PMO back then, and even today, you'll come into one of the back to one of the branches, air, ground, or maritime. Spend some time in each one of those, and then you kick down and go to the farm, and you become ops certified at the farm, just like any other prospective operations officer or case officer. But I would just go back to ground branch, or back then in those days it was called Special Operations Group Ground Branch. And Bosnia was still big back then. Flag Columbia was big back then. And we all thought, let's go do that. We're going to be in Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
I actually ended up PCSing on a rotational tour to Latin America 3 weeks before 9/11.
So I want to take a minute today to tell you guys about the Perfect Jean. I've been wearing them for a few weeks now and really enjoy them, and I just want to share it with our audience. Sometimes jeans have this problem where, you guys all have seen these skinny jeans that they like crush your balls, and, it's just not comfortable to wear. Or the other way around, jeans are like too baggy. You have this sort of like diaper in your ass area, it looks like. So there are these problems that, different fits of different types of jeans have. And the Perfect Jean strives to fix that. Both the fit, but also the mobility, the maneuverability. It has a stretchy fabric. Like they say it's like yoga ready, but I would say it's athletics ready. Moving furniture, doing things around the house, you're not gonna have that like super tight, like constricted fit that you feel like you're not gonna be able to move around in. And there are over 400,000 people out there wearing these jeans at this point, so not all of them can be wrong. I hope you guys will go and check them out. So a few scenarios where you can wear these jeans and where they really come together. Everything from, doing yard work or doing things around your house. If you have to move furniture around or you have to do handiwork, they're perfectly comfortable. But you can wear them, getting your man spread on the subway, if that's your thing. So the Perfect Jean is great for all kinds of different environments, whether it's doing handiwork around the house or on the job or athletics. And we really hope you guys will go and check them out. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjean.nyc, or Google The Perfect Jean and use the code HOUSE15 for 15% off. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code HOUSE15. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. So fuck your khakis and get the Perfect Jean.
Moved my family down there, thinking that, okay, this is where the future is.
Yep.
Do a couple tours down there, pop back up to Washington, GV, and then, kind of bouncing out of GV for the rest of my career, which is kind of what I did. But of course, 9/11 hit. Our paramilitary branch back then was not that big.
I've heard numbers like during the 80s and 90s that like ground branch had like 12 guys in it.
We could all fit around a conference room, maybe a couple chairs on the outside. It was pretty darn small. I was a nugget back then too, and yeah, it was not a lot of people. We just hadn't grown our numbers, and we just didn't get the support. And then all of a sudden, our stock goes way up, obviously with what we happened, and we know. Here we go. I get recalled back to Washington a few weeks after 9/11. Things are crazy back inside the building, as you can only imagine, in those early days, trying to organize. They're getting teams in with the Northern Alliance. They had first teams in there, late September of 2001 and rolling into October of 2001. And then we get to the end of October 1, and then my time comes up. It says, okay, you're the next team out. You're going to be the first team into the South. We had teams with the Northern Alliance, when you had plenty of guys on to talk about that, pushing down from the north towards Kabul. And that's been well documented in books and movies and stuff like that. Our team was actually going to be coming in to the south or the mid part of Afghanistan and push south again towards Kandahar. So we actually inserted in early November. I think it was November 8th or 9th. It was about a 6.5 hour insert on 4 Blackhawks. They had hit the refueler a couple times. It was it was an interesting insert because it was, I would call the zone semi-hot. We weren't too sure who was shooting at who, but they were shooting at something. We were separated upon insert. I was on the 4th stick. The other 3 birds went into another HLZ. It took a while for us to link up, but we did get linked up. It was a less than optimal insert, but we all got in safe, didn't get hurt too much. And then we basically humped over the mountains for a while, met up with some of the Karzai's tribals, and we ended up staying in a very small village. And this is in the middle of Oruzgan province. And we were there for 3 or 4 days, kind of keeping a bit out of sight. Things were still very tedious, with Karzai being back in, because Karzai first went in and we had to pull him back out. And then we went back in with him. A lot of people didn't realize that. And when he went in the first time, the Taliban were chasing pretty bad. We actually went in and pulled him out and then came back in with him. And so that was only 20 of us. Karzai made 21. So it wasn't like,
Was it your paramilitary team in an ODA together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much, and a couple other guys down at Bragg.
Gotcha.
Is what it was, and we made about 20. It was made about 20. So there wasn't a lot of us. It all happened. I can't even begin to articulate how fast it happened. I mean, we landed in Islamabad at like 11 o'clock at night, and then the next day we're down south in someplace in Pakistan where we can push into Afghanistan. And then that same night we inserted. I mean, it was less than 48 hours which we hit country when we actually went in. It happened so quick because the Northern Alliance was pushing down so fast. And they wanted Karzai in because he was our guy. Oops, you got to go. We good? Oh, I can't hear you. I lost. Yep, I still can't hear you.
Can't hear me.
Oh, there we go. I got you now. Okay. And then so we launched on a really quick notice. I mean, there's a couple of guys in the ODA I literally met when I got on the helicopter. It was just that catch and catch can. So we got in. We started then arming and equipping Karzai's tribals over the course of the following weeks. We ran out of water early on. We couldn't get our resupply in, so we had to drink Afghan well water. That really sucked. Really bad. That's the only time I've ever ran out of water in a real life situation. And technically we did have Afghan well water, some iodine tablets and those little
Yeah.
survival
With the charcoal in them.
Yeah. You don't get a lot of water out of that. So we got our resupply eventually. Ended up in Tarin-Kot. The Taliban didn't know we were in Tarin-Kot when we got there in 0:30 in the morning. And they started coming up the ways from Kandahar north towards Tarin-Kot. And then it was clear blue day, and the ODA and the combat controllers went out, just slaughtered them. It was literally, we had air stacked up to the heavens, and they just came in and they stopped them dead in their tracks. After a number of, we're in current hot for around 8, 9, 10 days, reorganizing, doing some drops. We started pushing towards Kandahar, doing lethal aid drops, building up Karzai's forces as we went, mostly with weapons, ammo, supplies of all different types. The Air Force was fantastic in their air drops. They were right on time, spot on every time. Amazing stuff. We kind of ran into ran into them just north of Kandahar, where they start resisting pretty well. So we had a little bit of fighting there. We took over and occupied some spaces on this little knob of a hill, and we could see the blood trails coming off the hill and stuff like that, where they had taken injuries and casualties. And then there's a little old medical clinic right next to this little knob of a hill. And I'll tell you why this is important in a second. And it's the first building we'd stayed in had any glass in it. It was just plexiglass, but it was glass. It was kind of nice. Oh, we've got glass in here. Well, a couple of days later, that's on December 5th, we got unfortunately hit with our own 2,000-pound JDAM. Came off a B-52. Investigation found out, I think it was a year or so later, that the air controller had changed out the batteries in his GPS. It reverted back to his own location, and even after checking it a few times, he dropped a bomb on top of his own position, on top of us. So it landed literally right on top of us, killing, three U.S. service members, Dan Petitore, Cody Prosser, and J.D. Davis, and wounding a lot more. Almost all the rest of the ODA that came in with us was all wounded after that. We were medevaced. Plus, just a lot of Afghans. It was supposed to be a kind of a quiet day. We were kind of in the process of having the Taliban come into our village, and we were going to negotiate the peace with Kandahar with them. Of course, Karzai was with us, and then this happened. So it was really a setback. Karzai was lightly wounded. It's superficial, but of course, he could have been killed, and that would have really turned things in a different direction. It was just a really bad day, and because it's obviously friendly fire. I don't know. I don't really like the term too much. Friendly fire. It's anything but. It hurts just as much. But I had never been at ground zero of a 2,000-pound JDAM. I hope I never am again. It was a day that changed the rest of my life.
About how far away from the impact do you think you were?
I was in the little building, but there was a big plexiglass window in front of me. I was actually sitting on a footlocker, starting to work on my laptop and type some things out. So all the frag came in that window, and it's a pretty good sized window. It was probably about 10 or 12 feet wide. And so that didn't help. And that was it was 50 meters, 40 yards right outside my window.
Wow.
So it was very close. I could just throw a baseball up there.
Yeah. If you weren't inside that building, it probably would have killed you.
It would definitely injured me more than I got injured. It was a funny sequence of events that led up to that. One guy was going to need this, and I'd borrowed the team sergeant's knots the night before, and I was going to run him back up the hill, but I got intercepted, and the other guy's going to take him up to the hill. And he tells my team chief, and he's Greg Vogel, and he says, "Hey, can you write up these cables?" So can you start working on some cable traffic? And I start writing stuff up, and then 3 minutes goes by, and boom. So you have these weird sequence of events that I could have easily been standing next to JD. Now, the bomb hit at JD's feet, or hit him. There was nothing left of him. He was completely incinerated. It literally landed right on top of him. And I would have been standing right there with him, giving him back his nods. And the ODA always made a good cup of coffee in the morning, so I had my canteen cup, and I was making my cup of coffee. And just a strange sequence of events that happened that I wasn't there. Other guys were, I don't know. And then when the blast came in the windows, all I heard was a sucking sound. That's the only way I can describe it, because it's coming in, maximum terminal velocity, 140, 150 miles an hour, whatever that is. And just this, and then this unbelievable explosion. We had thought that we had gotten some probes the day before. We took a couple RPG rounds, and it hit some of our Toyota Hiluxes in the gas tanks, and it caused that major explosion. But in the back of my head, I'm going, man, that's a big RPG, and that's a big gas tank. But I I was pushed to the ground. There was nobody there to push me. I don't know how I ended up in the position. I actually kind of fell into the blast, rolled up into a ball. I remember things in slow motion, all the shrapnel and frag coming over me. It was my first of two, I should say, things where I think I was a byproduct of divine intervention. And I'm not an extremely religious person, but
Close calls.
Yeah, and I no really real way. How do I fall into the blast? I rolled up I even rolled it up in the ball really well, and it was just strange. Anyhow, me and my buddy kind of checked each other out. He got blown in the corner, and then we thought we were going to go fight, and we kind of figured that took us a while to figure out that we weren't getting probed, and there was still concern with the Taliban going to take advantage of this. So then we just started dealing with some significant casualties. Casualties beyond my level of medical abilities and most people's medical level abilities, unless you're an ER trauma doctor. We had a couple PAs, 3 PAs that were, 18Ds that just they saved a lot of lives and did amazing work. But at the end of the day, we were faced with some very traumatic injuries during the course of this. One of them was, I ran out of the building at one of the courses of this, and there was this U.S. soldier. I don't know who he was. He had just come in that morning. We'd gotten some additional troops in that morning at like 3 o'clock in the morning. This was about 9 o'clock in the morning. This was about 6 hours later. And I didn't know this guy. And he was laying there on the ground on his back, but all of his intestines were out and everywhere. It reminds me a little bit about, if you've all seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, the scene on the beach, the guy has his intestines laying down and screaming for his mother. It's just like that, except it doesn't have any water, just a lot of sand and dirt. So all this stuff is covered. So I go over, and he's alive, got a pulse, and he's breathing. And we had these mortar rounds and RPG rounds on the hill where the bomb hit. They started to cook off. And so they're shooting off and explosions going off. And we're like, is somebody shooting at us? What's going on here? So I throw myself across this young soldier's body, just instinctively. And this guy wakes up, throws me off of him, and runs about the 20 feet back right to the steps of the little building I came out of, and then passes out.
Wow.
Now, that was fine, but all his intestines and upper and lower, and I don't know how many feet you have in you, but you got a lot, all right? 35, 40 feet. We're dragging behind him. So I'm, lack of a better term, I'm picking them up like this, okay? And I'm carrying them, and I kind of, here's a little bit here and here's a little bit there, and I kind of get over to him and roll him on his back, and I plop him down on his belly and wash him off. And never got the kid's name. I know the kid lived because he wasn't considered a KIA then, that incident. So
good.
Never got his name. Got him cleaned up, and he survived from what I understand. But other blast injuries with some of the guys off DOD, other U.S. soldiers, a lot of Afghans. I had an Afghan hand me an arm, and the arm was still connected, and the kid was standing right next to me that it was connected to. And, he's kind of does this thing, and he's those old Afghans with one of the beards, and just, wanting me to make it better. And, just very challenging things to deal with, or you have 30 seconds to save this guy's life. Go now. Boom.
Right.
Boom. Go with what you got right now. That's all you got. Nothing else. And, we all do the ABCs and first aid and stop the bleeding, get the breathing, check the airways, all that good stuff. But, it was challenging. It was challenging for me. I had medical training. I didn't have enough. At times I felt impotent and felt incapable. I should have had more medical training. I always preach this. You can never have enough medical training. Okay, especially trauma. You can never have enough. I'm rusty now, but that's a skill that you just got to constantly scrape off the desk, rub it, work it back up, get it warmed back up again, because you just can never have enough of that stuff. You can really save people's lives, and we did that day collectively. We did, and then we negotiated. We picked things up. We negotiated peace with Taliban. We moved into Kandahar. And then it was the Wild Wild West. We were looking for, Al Qaeda had a bunch of safe houses and schoolhouses and stuff in Kandahar. So most of them were abandoned. Not all, they had squatters. So we just started going after all those places. So, and then we picked up a treasure trove of information. We went to some of the terrorist training camps. Once again, our sensitive site exploitation was significant, and it was pretty elementary back in those days, the SSC process.
Yeah.
But we still picked up some pretty amazing stuff. We didn't find out about a lot of this stuff until much later, and then we got Karzai up to Kabul right before Christmas of that year, and he had been elected as the interim prime minister during the Bonn conference in absentia in November when we were pushing down with him. And then I think he was the interim president for them, and then became the president later, 4 or 5 months later, the official president later. And then on a 12-year run, circa 12-year run, 20 after that, we had no idea that Karzai would be the president for 12 years of Afghanistan. I would joke about when he got, we're staying in mud huts, drinking chai together and talking. He's a good guy. He was a good guy. He was a different guy back then. I still have a lot of respect for him. He's still one of the bravest men I've ever met. I've told people that many times. What he did, he didn't have to do it. The price on his head at the time, and even through the years, there's been a lot of disagreements. A lot of people have their own opinions about him as he matured in office over that 12-year period, but it's a tough job for anybody. I used to tell him that. I remember joking with him. We were sitting in one of the mud huts one day. It was early on. And he got voted by the Bonn conference, to take over as the interim. I said, we used to call him Mr. K. That's what we called Mr. K. His English is perfect. I go, man, you're going to make it to the White House before me. He goes, you think so? I go, I absolutely know so. And it was true. He never made flights before I did. I said, that's kind of it. I said, I've always wanted to go to the White House and, who doesn't want to go to the White House and the Oval Office? And you're going to be able to do that now. And I think he did that really in his first year of his presidency. But he's like, yeah, you're probably right. His English is fine. I saw him giving his acceptance speech to the Bonn conference on the Inmarsat phone in English without any notes. And it was just very eloquent, very, very smooth. Just a very, very special guy. That just changed over the course of that period of the 2000s and early 2010s. Basically, had an impossible job in a country that was, had an illiteracy rate in the 70 or 80%, that just had no infrastructure, didn't have a lot of things going for it from the get-go. Okay, and still doesn't to this day. And it was pretty much an impossible task when we showed up in early 2001 and late 2002. So it was interesting to be part of that. A lot of that perspective I didn't get till I came back from that first trip, because we're in there. We really only know what's going on right in front of you, and the whole the weight of Karzai taking over and him being with us like he was, kind of bringing him to power in Afghanistan. Agree or disagree with it, it was a fascinating thing to be a part of. Mm-hmm. He's a fascinating individual. He's someone that I still have a lot of great respect for, and he literally had the toughest job you could ever have. I still think we used to joke about that with him, but how that progressed over the next 12 years, and then how we progressed over the next 20 plus years in Afghanistan.
I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about how Afghanistan proceeded in the subsequent years. But it sounds like there wasn't a lot of rest for you, that you were over to Pakistan in short order.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the war zones in the early days. Pakistan, when we first started chasing after AQ in the FATA, the Federal Administered Tribal Areas. After some time later in 2002, the Pakistanis kind of clamped down on our activities significantly, and then for the next 8 or 9 years, we played that game with them, which led up to obviously the UBL raid, which everybody knows about, and playing that game with the Pacs. First of all, I've worked with a lot of great Pakistani officers, and some of them I won't name them, but I mean, I really have a lot of admiration for. They were quite enjoyable to work with. But the challenge was you'd have 2 guys working with you and maybe 2 guys working against you at the same time, so it could be kind of challenging. So, but I got really great things to say about my Pakistani comrades. They were just and a lot of them really tried hard to do and did with a really tough job. The political dynamics were amazingly difficult to deal with at all different levels. A lot of this, we didn't get until we reflected back on it. At the time it was happening, was there collusion with the Pakistani forces with Al Qaeda in the Federal Administered Tribal Areas? Because we had this. History has a tendency of repeating itself. We had the old Laos, Cambodia, Ho Chi Minh Trail thing from Vietnam going on. All right, they all ran across the border, and yet that imaginary line right there, the Durand Line, which was sometimes not well defined, and in some places in that part of Afghanistan, it's not defined at all. And where Pakistan starts and where Afghanistan begins. That was we couldn't go on the other side, and we dragged ourselves down, and here we had a Vietnam scenario all over again, and we don't learn from our past lessons learned very well, our past experiences. We repeat a lot of the same mistakes.
It's a difficult scenario, isn't it, where Pakistan kind of becomes the fulcrum of the war in Afghanistan. I mean, we did the strategic bombing of Laos and Cambodia. That didn't stop it. The agency had their drone program in Pakistan. You mentioned some of the early on stuff. I mean, it's not as if we didn't try.
No, it's not. We did. And the drone program was absolutely fantastically successful. And we did try until they finally put the clamps down on us early in 2002. But it was also go back more on the strategic level. A lot of it was dictated by the relationship that Bush 43 had with Musharraf, and how that trickled down was huge. There was a certain amount of trust and confidence that the president at the time had put in that relationship. A lot of us realize, it's easy for me to say this now, but I actually said it then, was like, no, they're pulling the wool over our eyes. And there was a cycle to what the higher ups in the Pakistani government were doing with us to keep us incentivized and get us an HVT every 6 months or a year. And we just keep the money flowing and keep things going.
Yeah.
We all saw this cycle. Jack, you saw this cycle. A lot of us have seen this cycle. I can remember explaining this to Codels that would come out and visit us when I was at certain locations in Afghanistan in the early days, as we got into the mid 2000s, and you just saw the cycle repeat itself. And I said, oh yeah, we just got so-and-so. So this is what's going to happen. We're going to go through another 6 or 8 months, and there's going to be more posturing. Then about a year from now, we're going to get another one. Oh, we're going to be happy. Let's go. And we give them their $2 billion a year, and everybody's happy. And this is going to continue for as long as they can do so. Because we had, we were in some cases just naive in how we went about things when it came to our foreign policy with that. That's how I call it. There was, in the 20 plus years we were in both theaters, we're still in Iraq, don't get me wrong, but especially in Afghanistan, as much as you tried to get the senior policymakers, whether they're congressmen, senators, senior members of the civilian or military members of the Pentagon or whatever it might be, or even in the intelligence community, there was just disconnect. They just didn't quite understand the realities on the ground. They didn't want it to. You saw a lot of people come out and they're trying to, they have a certain narrative they want to go back with, whether they're on the left or the right, to push certain things, and they're trying to find bits and pieces to fit that narrative. And I'm like, that's not the way to do it. And you saw it happening in front of our eyes. I'm not going to name any names. I mean, everybody did it. This is both Republican and Democrat. I'm not pointing fingers. and it just turned into this big, huge political mess. And there was really just a completely different understanding. I mean, the cultural differences in Afghanistan were so enormous. You're talking to some of these people had never even had any contact with the Russians back in the 80s. I mean, you've been there, I mean, how am I going to explain the World Trade Center when they've never seen anything bigger than a 2-story mud hut?
Right.
I mean, I remember when we were in some of these Afghan villages early on, there were 4 or 5 things that I could find that gave me any indication that we were in the 20th century ever existed. Now, granted, we were technically in the 21st century at this time.
Cell phone?
Nope. I'm not got there yet. Well, I'm talking early
Kalashnikov.
on. Kalashnikov, that's one. A weapon.
Automobile.
Usually a vehicle somewhere around. The third one is usually a well done by an NGO, a water well, something like that, right? The fourth and fifth ones are very obvious, but hard to figure out what they are. Fourth one was plastics. Mm-hmm. Plastics were invented in the 20th century. After the Second World War, we had a lot of plastics, right? And the fifth one was the easiest one to see, but the hardest to find, and that was polyester. Polyester didn't exist until the 20th century. So there might have been one more thing. I couldn't, it's debatable on whether there was another thing out there, but you had those 5 things that told you that the 20th century did exist at some particular point in time.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan.
Otherwise, it's like biblical times, basically.
It pretty much is. And then why are you here? We look like, we're sitting there and we've got all our kit on and all our gear on. I mean, we looked like
space aliens.
Martians. Yeah, space aliens beamed down from Mars there. I mean, that's what we looked like. They would come up and touch our skin and ask to touch us. They're very curious. Are we like them? They had no idea. This is really out in the hinterlands too. And it was fascinating. Just the dynamic of that. But I hate to, you don't want to clump everybody together, but I love the Afghans. I love the Afghan people. They were very, very, very accommodating, loving people. I fought with a lot of our Afghan brethren, as did you, and Dave and guys. And, they gave their life to save my life many times with some of our indigenous forces. And I just had the greatest respect for them and some of the stuff I witnessed over the 20 years or so. I'd do almost anything I could for them. I do like that. I do have some appreciation for the culture, but it's so difficult. It's so just completely opposite of everything we had. So here we are in Afghanistan. If you remember the times, okay, 02 comes along really quickly, and then what are we going to do? We're going to go invade Iraq. All right. I said this back then. People say it now. Don't tell the cosmic. What the heck are we doing invading a Muslim country? Okay. So the same, group from Bush 43 administration decides to do this. And I'm in Iraq. I'm in Ali al-Salim along with a lot of other guys sitting there. What the heck are we doing here? Why aren't we back in Afghanistan where the fight really is? And so did the Iraq invasion. Fascinating unto itself.
Can you tell us a little bit about where you were during the invasion? I mean, were you embedded with a ODA again? My particular team wasn't working. We at times worked with different ODAs from Fifth Group. We had a little bit different task when I went in. I'll just leave it at that. But we were sometimes co-located with some of those guys. A lot of us ended up in the same spot south of Najaf after the big push inward because Third ID was just moving, so fast that you couldn't keep ahead of them. And it was a very conventional war in that regard. It was extremely conventional. Big tanks, big Bradleys, attack helicopters, the whole thing. It's what big army does very well. And if you're not part of that, you need to get the hell out of their way, or they'll either shoot you or run you over. That's basically it, right? But we were part of a small team that were we had some command and control elements to it as we went in, and we ended up setting up south in the Najaf and the Seaman Factory with a lot of other teams.
when the big dust storm hit, I don't know if you remember that. That was still one of the most unbelievable natural phenomenons I've ever experienced in my entire life, was when that dust storm hit. I mean, I've never seen a wall of dirt that just lasted for like a day and a half. It was unbelievable. Ended up setting up, part of our unit was we set up Baghdad. We set up the office in Baghdad first, and then Bayap, and then we put up in the green zone when we first went to Baghdad. So we were there with a lot of the units and some of our other teams that were using assets and stuff like that. We're working with in coordination with our military counterparts. But it was conventional warfare. It was crazy. The Saddam Fedayeen were just absolutely nuts. They're psychotic in what they would do. They would suicide missions, just charging tanks and Bradleys and just getting mowed down. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. My biggest concern during that entire Iraq campaign, is I did not want to get slimed. I did not want to be the recipient of a chemical attack. I think that was shared across the conflict zone with everybody, every soldier and Marine in the conflict zone. None of us wanted to get slimed, and there wasn't enough decontamination units in the military to take care of everybody. And that was my number one concern. And I can remember a certain time when we were south of Najaf early in the morning where we had thought the unit. There was some rumors in the theater. We smelled a very heavy sulfur smell in the air, and I'm driving my Humvee and I look over at my buddy and he looks at me, and we're looking at each other because not really all that concerned. Is like, is he going to start doing the funky chicken, or am I going to start doing the funky chicken here any second? I mean, I hate to say that, but we're like, okay, that doesn't smell good.
Yeah, white
but,
foam coming out of the mouth.
Yeah, and you're reaching for your gas mask, but is it too late? What's that smell? And we pull up to the top of this little plateau, and there's a couple of troops from the 101st there, and they're in full Mop 4 gear. I mean, all mopped out. I get out and I'm wearing my Callaway golf hat, and, I got my Columbia shirt on.
That's such a CIA story right there. Do you have the Hawaiian shirt on?
Yeah, it wasn't Hawaiian, but I get out and I'm like, hey, well, what's going on, man? What's up? He goes, who the hell are you guys with? And I said, that's not that important. We're all on the same team. I go, what's up with the Mop 4? And you're, goddamn if I know what's up with the Mop 4. I've been in this thing for the last 10 hours. How come you're not, poor kid, had been in that mop suit for like 12 hours. And then what was interesting, right by that checkpoint, was there's a couple of dead horses.
Oh, yeah.
But there were a bunch of dogs eating breakfast. They chowned down on these horses. And so initially, I think it was a horse and a cow. I can't remember, but there was larger farm animals. And at first it concerned me, but there was a lot of stray dogs, and the dogs seemed to be fine. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what killed the horse or the cow, but the dogs seem to be fine. It's like putting the parakeet in a little cage, in a bird in a cage, right? We actually had those in Kuwait at our base. No, we had birds in cages. Yeah. It was old fashioned. We had a lot of other NBC warnings and all this other stuff, right? But we actually had birds in cages. Yeah. And so you can never have enough warning when it comes to stuff like that, right? And so the dogs barking and being alive made me feel a little bit better that there wasn't anything there, and it turned out there wasn't a chemical attack. But then that was always our big concern. We got into Baghdad. It was day one. It was crazy at Bayap. We ended up setting up at one of the presidential palaces after a day or so, and it was just the green zone was just getting established. All the mech units were formed up there at the arches, the big arches where the parade deck was. And then Baghdad had turned into basically, it was all the have-nots were taking from the haves.
Right.
So it was, I don't know if I could say this, but it was basically everybody was grabbing everything they could and taking it home. I mean, you saw, refrigerators on top of cars. Nobody cared about anybody else. You could go out town, nobody cared about you. they're just all literally RF and everything. And this went on for quite a few days. Okay. I mean, they are totally just completely just, it's just no law. Everybody's going after it, taking what they can. Right. It was just crazy. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And then after a couple of days, things kind of calmed down. But all in Baghdad means that people are just taking stuff from everybody else.
Can you tell us about the October 31st? You got ambushed with a fifth group team?
Yeah, we had come home that summer and then went back out a couple months later we're just out in western Iraq, out close to the Syrian border. The operating base wasn't established when I got there. We had to get it up and operational. We were trying to get some good area knowledge, get an understanding of what we had to do. We were right there on the border. We were a lot of foreign fighters coming across. Very challenging times. It was very difficult to do the intelligence work that we needed to do out there at the time. I'll just leave it at that. But it could be done. And we had just come into a border town, and we never even got out of the vehicles. We just drove around. We were trying to keep a low profile, but that was challenging. We come pulling out of town. We think everything's fine. There's this beat up old SUV in front of us with about 4 or 5 military age males. 2 of them climb in the back of this little SUV, which concerned us a bit, like they were going to get something and do something. And then just when we thought that we were thinking about, it was only 2 vehicles. We were going to try to get these guys pulled over, see what the hell they were up to. They took off on this dirt road, and we didn't think much about it. Well, the way the road was, we had to take the hardball road kind of like in a C, and this dirt road they took kind of cut across that. So we come around, I don't know, a mile or so later, and here's one of the guys standing on the side of the road with an RPG pointed right at us. And he gets, to tell you the truth, to this day, I can't remember if he shot the RPG or not. And then they separate, they scurry off over this little hill. They get flustered. I'm with a split team ODA, and then I got my guy, and then we have our vehicle, and the other ties in the ODA and the other vehicle. Our vehicle is a Mercedes G5 level 7 up armor, and they're in an unarmored Suburban. This is important to note later on. So we get a little split up. The guys in the ODA get out, and they end up on this little foot pursuit of these guys that try to ambush us. We consolidate to 2 vehicles, and in the midst of doing that, we're trying to get comms up. I walk from the up armored vehicle to the Suburban, and in the process of getting there, the ODA communicator, a guy named Joe Briscoe, takes an RPG round and it completely severs his right arm. I mean, it fins it out. RPG came and it chopped it off like whack. And went off behind us. Subsequently, I turn around. Joe is at my feet. He's completely missing his right arm. It's obviously bleeding pretty profusely. I have to, I was shooting over the vehicle, but now I get Joe and I throw him in the back of the car. And another guy named Chuck Good from the ODA is with me at that other vehicle. And we were going to get back over to the other vehicle and kind of get out of that area. We return some fire. We do so. We get over to the other vehicle. We kind of get out of that, off the X per se. And we still have the other small movements of the team up over this little rise. And so I tell the other vehicle to go, and the driver to go collect those guys up. We're not that far from our base. And I don't want to lose Joe. So I make that decision to do that. And so we turn around and get the heck out of there. What we didn't realize is that when we took that RPG round, or took another RPG round at that same time frame, because we had a couple of them go off, it hit our gas tank. It hadn't exploded the car, but it knocked a big hole in it. We found this out later when we saw the gas when we were back out there the next day. And so we only had the gas and the fuel lines.
Oh, wow.
And so the car ends up dying right there right in the big open area where
man.
the dirt roads meets the hardball road, and it's boom, 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 you know. And we're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? So, Chucky and I get out. We're firing back over the vehicle. We're starting to become a bullet magnet. That vehicle's becoming a bullet magnet. You know, the rounds are slapping the hard plastic and the metal pretty hard. Joe's in the back, kind of in and out of it. I'm standing on the road. I look to my right, there's nothing. I look to my left, and there's a vehicle about 150, 200 meters away. And I tell Chuck, I said, go hijack that vehicle. We got to get the hell out of here. We cannot be here. We got to be anywhere but here. Chuck won the Silver Star for this. I wrote him up for it, and just deservedly so. Boom, off he goes. So they start shooting at Chuck. I mean, he's a little tiny guy, but he's moving pretty quick. They start shooting at him. They kind of stop shooting at me, and then they realize, okay, he's too hard to hit. So I go around to the side of the vehicle, and as I'm getting Joe out of the back of the vehicle, he's kind of in it and out of it. Okay, he's losing consciousness, coming to and from. He's kind of in and out of it.
Did you guys get a tourniquet on him?
So this whole time I've been trying to. That's not funny, but it's.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're getting shot at. Yeah.
I mean, I see. There is no nub.
Oh man.
I mean, there is nothing. I mean, the arm is completely severed, and I mean, there was just nothing to put a tourniquet on. It was severed all the way up to the shoulder joint. During this whole escapade, I've been trying to put a dressing on Joe's arm the whole time. I never do get a good dressing on the arm. It was very challenging to do so under normal circumstances. So at this point in time, I take Joe and I fling him over my shoulder, and that we're starting to take a lot of fire. I mean, the rounds are hitting everywhere. And this was my second time of divine intervention. I talked about my first time earlier in Afghanistan with a 2,000-pound bomb. It felt to me as though I throw, Joe's about 6'2", he's about $190, he's got his kit on and everything. It's a pretty good sized guy. I mean, and I just felt like everything's hitting around me. You can hear the slap of the rounds hitting the metal and the plastic. And I just felt like there was this force field around me. I can't explain it. I just knew that we were going to be, I didn't know we were going to be okay, but I just knew we were going to get the hell out of there. I just did. And so I turn around, I start taking off with Joe, and I can step on all the rounds that are hitting the ground around me. I can just step on them. They're everywhere. They're like firecrackers going off on the ground. They're shooting RPGs at me, across them right in front of me. I'm a big fat slow moving target. I'm moving, but I do pretty good for like those first 50 meters, and then I start losing my poop, and I'm going. I am now. I'm not quite there yet. Chuck, meantime, has absconded with this vehicle. Help get us out of there, and I am running out of poop. I don't have anything left in the tank, but max adrenaline, max blast. I went to a very dark place for a few moments during that incident that I've never been to since. And it was almost a surreal, and you might have experienced something similar, and I've talked to some other veterans. It was a very, I can't even explain it. Nothing else in the world mattered except to get Joe to that vehicle. When I mean nothing else, I've had guilty feelings about this. I mean, whatever it took, even if it meant my children were going to grow up without a father. Whatever it took, it was a very surreal moment. I reflect back on it now, and I don't even quite grasp it that well. That's all. I just know one thing that, any of us that go into those combat situations, there's one thing that you never want to be, you never want to make sure you do. And you never want to let your buddy down. I don't care if that guy is, Army, Navy, black, white, Hispanic, doesn't make any difference. We're all green. Okay. I'm never going to let that guy down or gal down. Doesn't make any difference. And hopefully they're never going to let me down, and we're never going to leave anybody behind. Period. End of story. And that was it was a very surreal moment. I finally got to the vehicle with Joe. Throw him on top of the vehicle. I barely can move now. I'm so cramped up. We get him around the side, and then there's this Iraqi family in the ditch. And the ones that Chucky had taken out of the vehicle to hijack their vehicle, and one of the guys yells me, in English, he goes, "My money, my bag." And so he's pointing in the vehicle. So in the middle of the firefight, I start unloading these bags. They're like Walmart bag. And I'm looking for if I had some like cash in my pockets to give these guys, because I felt horrible. I was all doing a little firefight. I'm unloading these bags and everything. Then we can't get the vehicle started, and we have to get the driver back in the vehicle. And anyhow, we end up getting out of there, taking up a lot more rounds and RPG rounds. Fortunately, they all went too high, and none of them hit us directly. We did round up the rest of the team. It took us a while. QRF rolled out there soon thereafter, and just QRF. We were co-located with the 1st and 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, and when those guys roll, they roll, and they roll big. Yeah, Bradley's tanks, and they don't take any crap, and so they just leveled the place when they got out there because they start taking fire. I get back. We're trying to get the QRF out, and I end up having this. I'm trying to find the ODB commander, and I get stopped by I finally find him, kind of brief him up. A guy named Don Franklin, great guy, and I'm trying to get back out to go out with the QRF, but they had already taken off. But Chucky's with them, so they know what they are. I mean, they end up hooking up with him about 15 minutes later. So I end up getting this discussion. Some 10th Mountain guys were there with us, providing security at our base, and he goes, "Don, you're hit, and I'm like, "I am." He's like, I start checking this stuff, thinking, well, maybe I am hit, and I don't know it. So we kind of have this argument for a while. He thinks I'm hit. I don't think I am hit. What I don't realize, I'm completely covered in blood. And so it was natural for him to think that. So after ripping off all my stuff, we finally determined that I had not received any significant wounds. Like I didn't have any shrapnel or gunshot wounds that I could tell. And then that's it. I said, I told you I wasn't hit, And so then I went inside, saw a mirror, and I always just looked like I jumped in a pool of blood. It was all Joe's, mostly all Joe's. So, but Joe, we got Joe on the desktop pretty quick. I mean, he was out of there. We had a couple of dust offs right there at the base, at that Tiger base, and Joe ended up doing full 20 in the Army, retired.
Good for him.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a great start. I ran into him about 5-6 years later in San Antonio, and met his wife and his 4 daughters, 2 of which had been born after he had lost his arm, and it was a good moment. It was a good
Incredible.
time. A bit of closure for me. So that was one. We had gotten hit other times, other days, and we had that particular day. It was just more personal. For me. It was also more surreal. I don't really know how to put it. It was just different. It was more personal to me. I don't know. It's just, it was just a surreal day. We were lucky. Nobody got killed that day. Of course, nobody got killed that day. We killed a lot of bad guys. I'm not going to say we were luck. We made our own luck. But I mean, some divine intervention from the guy above. I don't know how that happened. Twice in a couple of years. It's made me do a lot of deep thinking about some things ever since then.
And you were awarded the Intelligence Cross for saving that soldier's life. Could you tell us a little bit about that award? Because I think a lot of people don't know what it is or what it means.
Yeah, it's always difficult. I was telling you in the pre-interview.
I know.
I'm never good about talking about stuff like that. But in general, it's a pretty interesting award. In fact, there's only been 39 of them issued since the CIA was founded in the 1947 to 48. Transition from the OSS, the CIA was created, right? Only been 39 issued, and most of the recipients are awarded the cross posthumously. Of course, they're not there to receive it because they're dead. And there's a small group that live to actually receive the award. I happen to be one of those. So it's a very special thing. I think it's important that people understand that there's these types of individuals out there in the shadows, and a lot of them have stayed in the shadows. True secret warriors, if I can use that phrase.
Some of these awards are still classified. Like you don't know who
yes,
these
they are.
people
The list,
are.
they
Yeah.
are. They're very classified. They're and you don't even know exactly who all those people are. There's only 39. You do know if you work in the organization, you can look some things up and they can tell you that. There's a couple that are still withheld, but it's truly an honor to be put in that category of individual. And then, the next one down is the Intelligence Star, and that's still a very, very honorable award. It's the second one down. It's given out a lot more. It doesn't devalue it. It's just what it is. It's a difference between like a Navy Cross, a Silver Star, and stuff like that. I mean, it's that type of thing. But the number of people that have both can definitely sit on your couch right there in your studio. There's not a lot of us, and that's just a byproduct of. I didn't do anything that you wouldn't have done or anybody else would have done. It's in those certain circumstances, or you probably did. I don't. It's my efforts are just minuscule compared to others. It's an honor to have been honored, but I feel as though I want to spend a lot of my time honoring those that never made it home.
Yeah. You
and I both have a laundry list of guys and gals that never made it home. Okay, I could just sit here and start naming them off, and I don't want to do that. But and that's what's important. Remembering, I remember them on their anniversary dates. I don't get them all. I think sometimes I forget about one or two here and stuff like that. And I beat myself up. But I feel this enormous responsibility and obligation to, on those dates every year, and I'm sure you and Dave do the same. Remember those. I can't remember them all. I didn't know them all. I just remember those that are in some form or fashion connected to me, and whether I was with them when they died, or whether I was, or whether I had to tell their families. I've had to do notifications, which is it is the worst thing in the world to do, to notify that their husband and their dad and it's not coming home. That's tough, especially with people that you've known for a while. It's tough. I've had to do that. I've had a lot of guys in the office, GB, that didn't make it home. A lot of guys that were wounded. And we started collectively. We started our own foundation called the Third Option Foundation. I'm sure you've heard of that at thirdoptionfoundation.org. It's a fantastic organization. It's CIA paramilitary officers' version of, and I hope I'm articulating this correctly, our version of kind of what you see with the Wounded Warrior Program, the Navy SEAL Foundation, and stuff like that. It's that version of. This is for our CIA paramilitary family. It does some amazing work. Just fantastic people.
Don, I just want to point out for our listeners out there, it's kind of important to understand that incredibly, all the things you're describing, that technically, like legally on paper, you're actually not a combat veteran, because those
Yeah.
things happened to you while you were working for the CIA.
Yeah.
Now you
I had
did
to get out of the Marine Corps to go fight
Yeah.
combat in the CIA.
You did more incredible things than I did, no doubt about it. However, I am on paper a combat veteran,
Yeah.
but people who served in the CIA aren't. And the third option fills this void because
It does.
you guys are not able to go to VA. You can't go to
Correct.
Veterans Affairs. You can't get that kind of treatment that is
Right.
out there, thank God, for all of our veterans.
Yep.
But that is not in place for our CIA folks. The paramilitary guys, and the third option kind of steps in and fills that role.
You're exactly right. That's a great way to put it. Thank you for and it was started by some guys inside our organization. They know who they are. Just amazing work. And a couple of guys is actually one of them was Brian Hoke. You know, Brian was killed in Afghanistan in 2016. Brian and Nate Delmar were killed on that day. Both GV officers, and they both had worked for me. Brian in particular that year leading up, and so Brian was a big part of getting Third Option Foundation going, and then and he's killed in combat action in 2016. But you're exactly right. These are guys that I mean, most of the American public doesn't even know what we're doing, and that's how it should be. You know, I always found it in the last 20 years. I always found it comforting. I'd come back, see some buddies of mine from college or whatever, and they asked me about it, and I couldn't say much about it. I always found it comforting when I came back that everything was pretty normal in the United States. Really. People were, taking their kids to school. We were worried about, things are pretty normal. And most Americans just kind of went about their daily lives. But that was a good thing. I wanted that. I wanted to come home to that. I didn't want to come home to, something that wasn't normal. And I always reflected that as a very positive thing. I want it to continue to be that way. There are a handful of guys like yourself, Dave, and others, and that will go do what we got to go do. It's a very small percentage of the population, and things are pretty much normal. Yeah, you have all the craziness that goes on in American politics, but I mean, it's good because I want that. I want it. That's what we go fight for. That's why we made the sacrifices that we made. And why some of our brethren who didn't come home, the sacrifices that they and their families have made and are still making today. I mean, those brothers and sisters and husbands and wives and dads, they're growing up right now without their dad or their mom. I mean, that's happening every day, and that they live it every day. And I think it's important that I know, we continue to beat that drum per se and remember those. And even sometimes more important when I could share those from my organization that paid that ultimate sacrifice. The stars on our wall, which some of those names still haven't been released, but it's just as precious as anything else to me. So if one thing comes of having this chat with you today is that people have understanding, whether it's Third Option Foundation, whether it's, all these other great Wounded Warriors, Towers, all this other great stuff that's out there. I don't want to be sitting here and just trying to be I'm just saying, just people show their appreciation for those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice or those that are still paying for that sacrifice today, whether they've been severely wounded. Because, you and I both have buds that have been severely wounded and have severe lifestyle issues today.
Sure.
And the challenges that come with that, not only for them, but also for their families. So I find it a huge obligation on my part to remember those guys as much as I can on those specific anniversary dates. I will always do that. I feel a bit, I do have a little bit of survivor's guilt. I would be, I think a lot of us carry that around. some days are better than others. You get reminders of certain things, and it kind of flares up. This is actually very medicinal for me in a strange way. Talking about it even though this is a very public forum, obviously, but and I encourage guys to do that.
I appreciate you doing that, and I know like some of these, like, honestly, they are traumatic stories. They're difficult to tell sometimes, and you don't really want to like boast about I won this award. That's not really what it's about for you. However, you are out here. You are the one that survived, and you are the one that's out there speaking for all of these guys who didn't come home. Right? It's on all of us, really, to tell their stories.
I mean, there's on all of us. We all have our own list of guys and gals that didn't make it home, and mine's not any special, any better than yours. It's different experiences, different units, different things, and stuff like that. And that obligation to listen to keep reminding people of the sacrifices that we're making, and its applicability in today's world. I mean, and its applicability, and the guys that have been to combat have been in this we're the last guys that want to go back to war. Okay, right? I mean, I'm the last guy that wants to go back and do something like that. And I will try to do anything to keep us from having to do that again. You don't want to experience that. It's just not something you want to experience. If you got to do it, you got to go do it. You got to go do it well. But it's been, so I still do that every day. I try to honor those guys in whatever little way I can. I literally think about most of them every day. I really do. You just something you just can't. You almost have to. I mean, I'll kind of get off. We've been kind of beat this like a dead horse, but I mean.
Well, to change gears a little bit, you had some other assignments after Iraq.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about working with the FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
That was interesting. I took a break from my time in the war zone. It was as we all experienced. My kids were little back then, littler back then, and we needed a little break from that. So I was integrated with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and it was interesting. Being on the domestic side with the organization, it's different. In being embedded with the Bureau is different. It was still in the time frame where the JTTFs were very active, as a lot of them still are today. We're still concerned about the internal threat, the homeland threat. And so building up that intelligence picture, building up that network, as the Bureau would put it, inside whatever major city you were in was critically important. So to keep us from, not making the same mistakes we had made leading up to 9/11. The inter-AG cooperation, not only within the intelligence community, obviously the law enforcement community is part of the intelligence community, but with the different members of the federal law enforcement community, state and local, county, city, and was integral in that. And having that, being able to making sure we keep the lines of communication open, the sharing of information that can be shared at the appropriate levels, that people that need to know about whatever threat situation it might be. We have such a diverse country, and in different parts of the country, we have different diasporas of different types of people that live different places, and the concerns that was bringing up to a lot of people. There was a lot of ignorance out there at the time. I mean, some of the most patriotic, loyal Americans are some of the people that just immigrated this country in the last 20 years. I mean, you know that. I mean, I can go on and on and on. We can't put these people in a bundle based off of religion or based off their ethnicity. I mean, I'm a multi-ethnic guy to begin with, so I got a little bit of appreciation for that. And so it was interesting working with the Bureau. The Bureau is on their own turf. They're an extremely effective. Now I'm a few years dated. They're extremely effective, but it's called the Bureau for a reason, because it can be somewhat bureaucratic. And so
what was it like for you going from being this wild man paramilitary officer in Afghanistan and Iraq to being,
Yeah.
I'm guessing, sort of a liaison,
Yeah,
to the
it was.
FBI.
I was a lone guy in there. I had my little skiff, and my high end systems, and first of all, it was a lot of fun. It was a good break. We had some interesting cases. We were looking for some interesting individuals. I like to see the working together with them. I could bring a different light to certain things because of my practical experience in the previous 4 or 5 years leading up to that. A lot of guys hadn't been to the Afghanistans and Iraqs at that point, and a little bit better understanding of some of the cultural things that we had to deal with when dealing with whatever local population there happened to be. So that part was interesting. And it was given and in a certain sense, I was kind of the Lone Ranger, so I kind of bounced from squad to squad and whatever. The organization, the agency gives its officers quite a bit of autonomy when we operate and work. And that's not the case with some of the other federal agencies. I'll just leave it at that. So that autonomy was something at times that, was envied by some of our other some of my counterparts. But, it's also one of those things, they give you enough rope to hang yourself too.
Sure.
So one comes with the other too. So, but our communication lines are a little bit quicker and faster, and sometimes federal law enforcement, and for good reasons too. I mean, CIA is not a law enforcement entity. And the Bureau and the other federal law enforcement agencies do what they do, but they have to do about it in their manner, because sometimes they're trying to build a case or whatever the case might be, and they have to follow that rule book. So the challenges are many. I do know the FBI has gotten a lot of bad press. We've all gotten a lot of bad press, but I got nothing but the greatest respect for the FBI agents that I worked with. A lot of them I still stay in contact with. A lot of them are retired now, and got nothing but the greatest respect for those guys and gals. Absolutely.
So
great Americans.
Talk to us about going on to become the chief of ground branch around 2015. I mean, what's it like? I mean, you had this pretty incredible career. I mean, you worked your way up through the ranks.
It was, to me, it was kind of it was a bit of a pinnacle.
Yeah.
Assignment for me. I guess I would equate it to me, maybe a battalion commander or CO of the Ranger Regiment or whatever the case might be, something like that. I mean, battalion commander in 5th group or something like that. I have a 5th group commander. I mean, it was an unbelievable challenge. You have some very hardened, chiseled veterans, as you can only imagine. A little gray in the sideburns and a little longer in the tooth. It's a tough crowd. So I'll tell you, and deservedly so. Some of the innovation was amazing, and we expanded on that. We just trying to keep up with the operational tempo we're not that big. I won't say how big we were or are, but we're just not that big compared to some things in the military.
Yeah.
But what we bring to the table with a relatively smaller or very small group of individuals is hugely significant, and in all the different places in the world. And it was an enormous challenge. It was an enormous honor. It was a tough couple of years. We took a number of casualties, both guys that were killed and guys that were severely wounded. That's going to happen. We were still heavily involved in Afghanistan, Syria, and all the other places in the world. That was taking up a lot of our time, really having to do, the hard and dirty work that needs to be done, along with some of our colleagues in the Special Operations Commands. So it was a lot of interaction obviously with JSOC and SOCOM entities, which is critical. But, a lot of these relationships, they grew over time. I mean, there were guys that were in 01 and 02 who were like, I don't know, captains and majors or lieutenant commanders, and they grew up to be admirals or whatever, grew up to be colonels and generals. We all kind of grew together over this time frame. And, And so it wasn't like you had to go and reinvent the wheel when you went down to talk to the Ranger Regiment, or you went down to go talk to these guys, whatever. I mean, we had been working there for a while. A lot of us had known each other in different jobs or different capacities in the past. And so it's not that big of a community at the end of the day, the special operations community. It's pretty small. And so that was fascinating. It was fascinating in the fact that our office had, we were in a lot of different theaters doing a lot of different amazing things. It just wasn't all Afghanistan or Syria. So that was a challenge, huge challenge unto itself. I would go back in a heartbeat to do it again. I don't know, I might be a little too old, but it was an honor. It was absolutely, it was definitely, it was one of the biggest honors I had working at the organization. As being Chief GB, there's no doubt about it. Nothing will top that. I don't care what happens. Matter of fact, I think I've already told my wife on my gravestone I wanted to say Don Parnell Grand Branch. I mean that's basically it. That's all that needs to be said. And to those guys and gals that are out there that are either listening to this or know me, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And a lot of fantastic Americans that are just and that are getting the job done right now, man. Flank hitters, they're just pipe hitters. They are just absolutely going after it, and yet they do it. They do it in the shadows. They do it in secret, and that's just how it should be done, and it has to be done that way. So, greatest honor I had. I would do it again, but I had to move on. I went out to be chief in Erbil after that, which was absolutely the most amazing job in the world. Yeah.
Slow down there, Don.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you skip over this. Around this time, when you're chief of GB, there are some interesting things going on here. Both Ukraine, 2014, the first time around, and Syria with ISIS is popping off.
Yeah. That was fascinating. It was, of course, what happened in Ukraine when the Russians went into Crimea, and then we our work there was that time frame between 2014 and 2021, and it's early on there. And our work with the Ukrainians was critical, and it still is to this day. We knew what Putin wanted back in 2014. He wanted the land bridge to Crimea, still does. He thought he had the rightful rights to take Crimea. It's debatable on whether that's the case or not. At the end of the day, he did so. And then, of course, was it 7 years later, he went ahead and invades Ukraine and tries to reestablish. And then, of course, that conflict's still going on today. I got nothing but the greatest respect for the Ukrainians, having worked with some of them. Everybody always talks about how corrupt Ukraine is and how this is and how this. But let me tell you, heck, our country's corrupt. Okay, so I mean, we have our own problems too. I don't want to get into this talk about corrupt Ukrainians, but I got greatest respect for him. And when Putin went in there a few years ago, he had no idea what type of fight he was really going to get in the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are backed up; they're in their own backyard, and they have you don't want to go against that guy. Who's fighting you in his own backyard. He knows the land. He knows the territory. He's got his back against the wall, and we need to continue to support our Ukrainian brethren. We need to bring both parties to the peace table. Okay, we need to stop people from being killed in this horrible war. That needs to stop, and hopefully with this ceasefire agreement, that will stop for at least a temporary period of time. And then work out some sort of, longer term ceasefire agreement. I have my ideas on how they should do it. So does everybody else. But that Putin has wanted that land bridge to Crimea for a long time. I think that part of Ukraine is very pro-Russian to begin with, has been for decades. I think they'll probably end up with some sort of, this is just me guessing, some sort of I don't know, demilitarized zone or something like that, that gives Putin probably what he wants. Of course, our current president will get a lot of criticism for that, but at the end of the day, we don't want them at war. It's devastated the great country of Ukraine and the Ukrainians. It's going to take generations to rebuild that country. They're a first world country. They're a sophisticated country. But it's going to take a couple of generations to build it back. It's sad as heck.
What was that like for? What was that like for GB jumping from Afghanistan, Iraq theater to Ukraine?
Yeah, huge, great question. The counterintelligence threat is significant, especially as you can imagine. So that we're stepping up big time in that arena, and it's just different because you have a lot of obviously some dramatic cultural differences from Afghanistan and Iraq, and now we go into Eastern Europe here in the former Soviet Republic, Ukraine. You have a different level of education, different level of sophistication. Not that it's any worse or any better. I'm just saying that it's just different. They're more of a first world society, and even with the language differences, it doesn't matter. The Ukrainians are a very sophisticated people, and it had its challenges, believe me, because of that. Because they are. I remember talking to them like, hey, they were telling me like, hey, 2 years ago you were like the enemy. Now you're sitting here in my office. I mean, it was like one of those type of things. So, yeah, and that was a few years ago. Of course, a lot of the dynamic has changed in these last 3 or 4 years. But and a lot of those brethren that we worked with back then are dead now. It's sad, but it's true. But it really was. It was a dramatically huge difference and huge change for us. I put it that way. A couple times we had to tap brakes, like, oh, hold on a second here. We're not in Afghanistan or Iraq. We are here, so let's adjust how we're going to do this. So, but the guys always did that. So fantastic work. But a lot of it I just can't delve into.
I get it. And then at the same time, Syria is happening.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, I know, I have sensed over the years a lot of frustration about the kind of like stop, go.
Yeah, Syria was a tough one, man. It still is. I mean, now, that HTS has taken over. HTS is basically, al-Nusra Front, which is Al-Qaeda affiliated. We all know that. And they're trying to rebrand themselves as the new, as a new leader in Syria.
The kind of Al-Qaeda that you can take home to mom.
Yeah. I've heard something said along those lines. I wasn't going to say that, but since you said it, that's basically it. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, that doesn't make any sense to me, but that's what it is. They're trying to rebrand themselves. A lot of this hasn't made the headlines recently. It's really gotten trampled down in the headlines because everything that's been going on in our country since the election. But that's what it is. I mean, they're al-Nusra Front, heavy Al-Qaeda affiliated organization. They were very effective in fighting the regime when the regime was still there. Syria was a strange place to. It was just different, man. It was just different. There was a lot of political ramifications to the area. It was such a complicated problem set, and so many different dimensions. I remember, I lived it, briefed it, all the briefs every day, and I still had problems getting my hands wrapped around it.
How complicated it was.
How complicated it was. You had all these different players in all these different areas, and between the Turks and the different types of Kurds. Not all Kurds are created equal. There's different types of Kurds, and of course you had the Iraqis, and you had the Syrians, and you had all the different anti-regime groups, and you had the regime, and you had al-Nusra Front. I mean, and then of course the Iranians, and then it just got extremely complex very quickly. Very, very few people, I thought, and I'm not going to necessarily put myself in this batch, but I mean this group really understood what the heck was going on in Syria at any given point in time. It was extremely hard to get your hands wrapped around. It It just was. It was because it was so multidimensional, and just the different relationships we had with the different Kurdish groups just by itself was complex.
Sure.
In the YPG with the Syrian Kurds, you had the KDP, the PKK, the PUK. You had of course the Turks hate all the Kurds and all the dynamics that go with that, and the history that goes back with that. I mean, it just makes things. You had this strange dichotomy where you had. I remember far in all the way in eastern Syria, you had like regime checkpoints in YPG land. It was just so weird.
Yes.
It was like, what? The regime's like 300, 400 miles away in Damascus, and got this checkpoint. It was just strange like that. It was a strange dichotomy of things, and a strange way for us to execute
I'd like to ask, one of the things that as I've heard that made this situation complicated is that there was almost two different missions going on. One was destroy ISIS. The other was destroy Assad.
I would say that's a really good way of wrapping it up right there. That's exactly what happened. I couldn't put it any better. That's exactly what, and I literally saw times where the two kind of came together, and morphed into one. And it was challenging, but that's kind of like what it was. It was very strange. You did have this, okay, we're going to go kill ISIS. We're going to go kill ISIS. Going to go kill ISIS. Everybody got that part. Everybody's for that part. Even the Russians were that. Part, all right. I mean, everybody's for that part. And then and then we got to fight the regime. Okay, but so we got these guys. So wait, who's on first and who's on second?
Yeah.
Okay, this, and so that's why it made it. That was one of the things that made it so weird. It really was. Weird may not be the right adjective, but it was just strange in how we went about that. And to a certain extent, how up until recently. I mean, this is up until recently. We were still doing that, of course, until Assad left and stuff like that. And HTS came in and said, hey, we're the kinder, gentler Al-Qaeda. Don't worry about us. You can bring us home to your mother and meet your mom and all this sort of stuff. I don't think so, but I mean, that's what they're saying. I mean, I can't remember the leader of the HTS off the top of my head, but he's got some history, but that I like that assessment best. I've heard that assessment a long time ago when somebody said we're fighting a war on two different fronts in Syria in a way.
Yeah.
And that, in a nutshell, is basically what we had been doing. But I would say of all the conflicts that we've had in the past 25 or 30 years, that one has to be absolutely the most difficult to understand and get your hands around by 10 million miles. It was just so difficult to do so. And so if you're dealing with it, you can't get your hands around it. There's no way the American public is, and there's no way that some of the policymakers are going to get their hands around it either. Yeah, some of them never really did. They never did. They got their hands around what we were doing in Afghanistan. Yeah, or even Iraq. I mean, after all these decades, 2 decades doing stuff, the guys never quite understood it. I saw it happen. I could see it. I could see it with some of our policymakers. They just never got their hands around it. They were. Maybe at no fault of them, but you could just see that some did. There was, and I won't name them, but I could name them, some of the policymakers that really understood it, and at least in my eyes, and got what we had to do. But there was a handful that didn't. So.
And your last assignment was to Erbil.
Yeah, working with the Kurds. I love it. I was chief there. Worked with. I'm not going to speak too much directly about what we're doing because we're still doing it there. But I love, worked with the KDP and the Barzanis and all our, and it was just fascinating. It's a fascinating history of the Kurdish people. Got nothing but the greatest respect for our Kurdish brethren. They are a great ally. They are fantastic. I actually wrote a paper a couple of years ago. That got published through the Lobo Institute through Mixed Place.
Oh, cool! I'd love to read it.
On why we need to back the Iraqi Kurds. I got it cleared by the Public Relations Review Board, and basically it outlined, kind of gave you a little soup to nuts on all the different categories of Kurds, if I can use that. I don't know if that's a proper term to use to tell you the truth, but different types of Kurds that you had, because there's not, they're not all the same, and the dynamics between the two it's important to understand that when you're working with them, because they're going to be fighting amongst each other as much as they're going to be fighting with you.
Yes.
If that makes sense. And so they'll spend 49% of their time fighting amongst themselves and 51% of their time fighting with you to whatever you're going to fight with them against. It's kind of a weird dynamic. That's just kind of how it is there. That's just kind of assumed and accepted. And until they can stop doing that, they'll become a lot more effective. But they just can't seem to get over that. And for valid reasons. I'm not knocking them. There's a lot of good, valid historical reasons on this.
Yeah, there's politics and history.
Politics and history on that. You just can't just sweep that aside. But but I love our Kurdish brethren. But and we got to maintain that relationship. A place like Erbil is strategically, it's critical as heck for all the obvious reasons. Not only its geographical location, where it's at, the partnerships that we have there. It's something that has to be maintained. Unfortunately, it's the Kurds are landlocked, and so it creates some problems, challenges for that, because they are landlocked.
I will go ahead and kind of add to that a little bit, just to explain to people that whether it's Kurdistan or the Philippines or Ukraine, and I specifically talked to the Kurds about this, when the United States backs away and we decide, hey, we're done here, and we move out, their weapons start to break down, their vehicles start to break down. We give them this war material, and they are able to operate it, but they may not be able to maintain it. And so, actually Kurdistan is a great example, because we pulled out of Iraq, and then ISIS happens, and we're right back. So instead of this stop, go, maybe just maintain a consistent presence in some of these countries that we're often in.
Couldn't agree more with you. As a matter of fact, our Kurdish brethren have not forgotten that. When ISIS was coming back up the road, they were just outside the city limits of Erbil, and they've definitely have remembered that. Even though we've tried to screw the Kurds over many times over the past couple of decades, unfortunately, with some of our questionable foreign policy decisions over the past 20 or 30 years. 40 years, even more than that. But that's an ally that we need to have. Northern Iraq, you say in Kurdistan, it's not Iraq. It is Iraq, but it's really not Iraq. I mean, you can go to, I will fly to Erbil today, get off. It's a very nice airport. Go stay in a hotel out in town. Very nice. I'll go to a restaurant. It's in Ankara, which is the Christian part of town. The Kurds are very accepting, very tolerant people. They take all different types of religions, all different types of people. And you can go into a restaurant there, and you would, if I would plop you down in this restaurant, you think you're at a steakhouse in Tyson's Corner or in Brooklyn or someplace. I mean, the only thing that would throw you off is that there'd probably be somebody smoking some hookah, with smoking inside, and there would be soccer or football. That wouldn't throw you off that much, but it wouldn't be an American sports on the TV, and that would be about it. I mean, you can get any drink you want there. You can get the food. I mean, it's very westernized. It's not what people envision when they go to Iraq. It's not. It's Kurdistan. The Kurds have. It's very easy to say, hey, I think we need to back these guys because they got their stuff pretty squared away here. It's pretty obvious in that when you go to a place like Erbil and you see how pleasant these places are. They really are. I mean, I've had those same observations from people that would come out and visit us, and they were just shocked that they were in Iraq eating at some steakhouse in Erbil, just like anybody else. It was just nuts.
So Don, talk to us about retirement and working with longbow and fogbow.
Well, I haven't done much with fogbow, Mick Mulroy stuff. I've been on the outside, kind of looking in. I thought I was going to do some stuff. Fogbow does some amazing humanitarian work. Mick Mulroy and his crew, whether it's in Gaza or in the African continent, they're still doing some more stuff. And I think they got a lot bigger plans, I think, coming up in the future, as Mick can tell you. some fantastic stuff that I may or may not be a part of, but I definitely support 100% on what they're trying to do. I've been retired about a little more than 4.5 years. The first year was the whole COVID, so it was kind of just all screwed. Everything was all screwed up. Everybody remembers those days. So I kind of discount that first year. But I kind of prioritize things. I didn't want to go back to work full time. A little bit had to do with my age and time I was in my life. I wanted to. I retired on my 59th birthday, right before the day before I turned 59, and I wanted to spend my 60s as being a grandfather. And so I got 4 grandkids now. It's been great. We spend a lot of time there. They're not local. They're about 8 or 9 hours away in northern Kentucky in the Cincinnati area. And then my youngest daughter's out on the West Coast. She's 27. She's out on the West Coast, and she spend time seeing my kids, spend time seeing my grandkids. The rest of my family's number one priority. I do my golfing and hunting and fishing trips as much as I can. And then that's up there at the top of the list. You know, I try to stay away from the W word, but I still do some work every now and then. It's mostly just contracting work as instructor, as a teacher, instructor, or mentoring for a variety of different companies. Kind of my give back to the intelligence community or the special operations community. Kind of passing the torch per se in some of the courses I teach and instruct. I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy working with the younger folk, and passing on this vast knowledge that I have, right? This vast knowledge of experiences. But I teach some of this stuff, and then I give some of them, hey, listen, this is what we did in real life, and how this applies to that, how it applied to it at the time. In whatever TTPs that you might be talking about. So whether it's tradecraft or whatever, UTS, surveillance detection, whatever the case might be. So I do some of that. And we travel quite a bit. My wife and I travel. My wife retired from the ACU about a year after I did. So we're trying to, do a little bit of traveling, not too much, but a little bit of traveling. I did a lot of travel when I was in the organization, but I didn't go to any of the nicest places. I did go to one nice. I was stationed in London. I was a chief of operations in London for a couple of years before I was chief of GB. So that was a heck of a great time and a heck of a great tour. Very traditional. I loved working with our British colleagues. I loved London. I think it's the most fascinating city in the world. Loved living there. If money were not an object, I probably would have a flattened Marleybone. I could tell you that right now. That's how much I love it there. My wife and I was the same way. There was just something about London that I just love. Actually, we're going back there in about a month to visit some friends and stuff like that. So, but I try to. It's funny how busy I've been since I retired. Somebody once told me that. When you retire, sometimes it takes you a week to do what you used to do in a day. And I had to think about that. And there's a little bit of truth to that. I've had those moments, but they've been few and far between. And I haven't had any problems filling up my day. And between the teaching, instructing, and mentoring that I do, and family time, it's filling right. My 2025 is filling right up. Let me tell you.
Don, where can people go to find you if they're interested in working with you? I mean, are you on LinkedIn or social media?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Don Parnell. Pretty straightforward. I think I'm pretty easy to find out there. It has all my stuff on LinkedIn. I also have a Facebook page on the same name. Probably not that hard to find me on LinkedIn if anybody has a LinkedIn page.
We'll put some links down in the description of this podcast.
Yeah. So I do get people that have reached out to me via LinkedIn or via some other mediums. I probably get 6 or 7 people call me at least every 4 or 5. I get calls all the time. People I don't even know. Friends of friends, or whatever. Like, hey, they want to talk to somebody, or maybe get some career advice, or hey, I've never really talked to anybody about working at the CIA, and there's not much I can't share any details and stuff like that, but I mean, you can kind of cover just the generalities of it. It is. I hate that it's so common to say this. It is more than just a job. It's truly a lifestyle. I know that's cliche to say that, but it really is. It's a lifestyle of everything. It affects everything that you do in your life. And so, but then on the flip side, that's the fun part about it. And you can do stuff there that you can't do anywhere else. And I know people that have stayed working, good, hard, dedicated people that still work there when they probably could get out and make a lot more money. But the mission, they're driven by the mission. They're driven by the things that, that they like to do. And that mission keeps them going. Thank goodness we have those people because, you can only do those type of things by working in an organization like that. And, it's gotten a lot of bad press and here and there and who this. Let me tell you, the core people that work at CIA and a lot of people in the intelligence community are just some good Americans trying to do a tough job every day. And they're giving it their best shot to do it. And we should be thankful that they're there doing that job. I can say that right now.
Don, thank you so much for this interview. Really appreciate your time. I hope to have you back on the show again sometime. I think we kind of just scratched the surface. And yeah, thank you, man.
No, thank you guys. I'm a big fan of your show. I've just kind of gotten into the whole podcast thing in the last 8 or 9 months, believe it or not. I'm a little slow in the uptick, but I just find it interesting to listen and hear about very interesting people and what they've done and thanks for having me on. I hope your listeners got something out of this. I hope they found me interesting enough. I don't know. I guess we'll see in your comments.
They will.
I don't know if you have a comments section.
Oh, we have a question?
Stuff like that. Yeah. But it's been an honor to be on here with you guys. I wish Dave could have joined us. That would have been great.
Yeah,
but,
me too. We have one question. We have one question for you, Don.
Yeah, sure.
From JJ, were you surprised by how deep your background check went?
I was a little bit, but of course I didn't know what I didn't know back then. When you first came on board, you don't know what you're going to know, but they go back deep. I mean, I think I had to give them where I lived when I was when I was 6 years old or something like that forward. I mean, they go back deep, and then all your foreign contacts and stuff like that, and all the different places that you've lived. It was a little bit of a surprise, but now that I think about it, it kind of makes sense. It's a very thorough. They're a very thorough organization, as they should be. So yeah, I was a little shocked on how deep they went, but after giving it some thought, it kind of made sense to me. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it for the questions. I'm looking through it.
Cool.
Yeah, Don, this was great. Listen, if you're ever coming through New York as well, feel free to come into studio. Have a couple
Absolutely.
scotches.
I'm gonna definitely take Jack up on one of those stogies. So
yeah,
so
we have plenty.
Definitely all over that. I was definitely envious of that. So I like to partake occasionally and stuff like that. And Dan, thanks for having me on, man. Thanks for all your help and assistance with this.
No, my pleasure.
I hope this was informative for you guys and for your listeners. And I'm looking forward to hearing another year's show. I'm looking forward to listening to you guys and who else you got coming on soon. So I'm a big fan. So you guys take care.
We appreciate that, Don. Thank you. Just want to let everybody know to don't forget to check out our other show, Eyes On, which is hosted by Andy Milburn and Mick Mulroy himself, and Jason Lyons. Yep. We talk more geopolitical, topical stuff going on. The link is in the description for that, and you can check out all of Don's links in the description as well. And Jack Murphy, he has a book called We Defy, The Secret History of Special Forces. Out now. The link is in the description as well. Jack, take it away.
Oh, wow. I haven't read it. I got to be interested.
If you send me a address, I'll mail one out to you this week.
Okay, I will do that. I've looked forward to that. I'm actually working on my own memoir. I actually have it sitting over here.
Good.
I printed it out. Yeah, I have 102,000 words and about 244 typed out pages.
Wow.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what 102,000 words means, but I know it's a lot.
102,000 words is 350 pages, probably.
Pages, yeah. I wrote it for. I'm writing it. I got to send it to the PRB, but I'm writing it for my kids and my grandkids.
Good for you, yeah.
And to tell you the truth, that is actually one of my motivators for having this discussion with you tonight. It sounds a little self-serving in that way, but my grandsons, of course, my granddaughters. I don't know. 20 years from now, when they're old enough to understand this, they can pull up and listen to their grandfather.
It's not self-serving. I mean, it's good and it's important. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I get contacted by the children of Vietnam veterans all the time, and they want to know what their dad did during the war. And I can give them a little bit of advice about, FOIA-ing some documents and things like that. But that document that they get from the government doesn't tell them the stories that they want to hear or that they want to know about, right? And that's why it's important to do, things like this, to write your memoirs. You should do those things.
Yeah, I mean, to my daughters, Allie and Jayana, and my grandchildren, Braylon, Addison, Samuel, and Jackson, they, when they listen to this, when they're old enough to understand it and appreciate it, my official grandfather name is Papa, from their Papa. You have to choose your grandfather name now, okay? You just can't you have to have one. You have to deconflict it with the other grandfather. I'm a Papa, so I hope Papa's done him proud tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would tell to people, my recommendation to people out there is, even if you don't want to do a podcast, you don't want to write a book, I totally get it. But write 20, 30 pages and put it into a shoebox or safety deposit box for your kids. They'll appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Don. And everyone else out there, we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk then. Hey guys, it's Jack. I just want to talk to you for a moment about how you can support the show if you've been watching it, enjoying it, but you'd like to get a little bit more involved and help us continue to do this. You can check out our Patreon. It is patreon.com/theteamhouse. And for $5 a month, you can get access to all of these episodes of The Team House ad-free. The same goes with our affiliated podcast, Eyes On, with Andy Milburn, Jason Lyons, Mick Mulroy. That one, you will also get all of those episodes ad-free. And you support the channel and the show, and we really appreciate it. The Patreon members are literally what has helped this company, this small business survive, especially during our early years. And you are what continues to help this thing going, even as we navigate the turbulent world of YouTube advertising. So we really appreciate all of you guys. There's going to be a link down in the description to that Patreon page, and there is also going to be a link to our new merch shop. So if you guys want to go and get some Team House merchandise, we got stickers, and we also have patches. And I should mention, if you sign up for Patreon at $10 a month, we will mail you this patch as well. So we really appreciate that. But they're also for sale on the merch shop. And additionally, they got t-shirts up there, water bottles, a tote bag, coffee mugs, all that good stuff. So please go and check them out and support the show. We really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.